We are now recording.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have an interesting session today, really about prospecting and trying to focus specifically on prospecting, not really advancing around that, but essentially just trying to put together good strategies to develop that prospect list, where to go, who to go to, how to prioritize it, etc. And the whole goal around this is really to enable prospecting to be something that is not really a spray and pray sales approach. And, I think without an intentional strategy, and I am certainly guilty of this, I think I started my career in sales doing this spray and pray approach. I had a sales leader who said, Eleanor, if you just go out there and you make a ton of calls, the more people you call on, the more business you get, which is absolutely true. But, so I just ran around and talked to anybody who would listen to me, and even those who didn't really want to, and then prayed something would happen as a result of it. Not necessarily the best or most strategic way to prospect. One of the challenges with that, while it did work to generate business, one of the major challenges with that was that it wasn't time efficient. I wasn't really prioritizing my time and really determining the best places to go. So hopefully today, for those folks who are on this call, we'll get some meat out of that and help you start to become a bit more efficient and more targeted in your approach to defining sales targets. I now, years later, really preach this notion of being intentional about who your sales targets are, defining those sales targets, and being having a strategic approach to that, knowing where you're going, which takes a little time on the front end to set up, but saves you a great deal more time later as you venture through. And, this helps you build an action plan, so to speak. So in this process, you understand where to point. So who are you going to go after? Who's that ideal prospect? You learn to effectively, or you've determined how to effectively structure your sales efforts. I think for entrepreneurs, for all of us, but most particularly for entrepreneurs, time is one of those things that is just so important. And there are so many things that pull at time. And your capability within time, that being really effective and efficient around how you spend that time, having a plan of action so you can use that time well, is of paramount importance. This strategy also helps you identify right time and right place. So I've had many times sellers say things like, well, I see these folks and they're advertising now, but they won't talk with me. Or, I can never get them at this point in time. Or, I talked with them 6 months ago or 3 months ago, and they told me they weren't advertising, and now I see them. And a lot of that really is around the strategy of identifying right time and right place. Just like we have seasons, and there are seasons, our advertisers and businesses also have seasons based on their sales cycle and their journey. So trying to identify that within your prospecting strategy is also quite helpful. And then understanding in that prospecting strategy that they plan in advance. So if we take that just one step further in prospecting and think about when the best time is, for example, Joe is a couple of the Joes on the line have heard me use this example several times, but we see fitness, health, and beauty as big categories that start advertising directly after Christmas. And so, I've had sellers and business owners say, hey, I'm calling on these folks in December and November, and they're not willing, or they go and call on them in January when the business is running. They've planned that business in September and October at the latest. They already know where it's going. They've got to have a strategy in place. So part of prospecting around right time and right place is having yourself out there in advance, having the structure around your strategy and your prospects, but having yourself out there in advance in enough time to pre-plan to get to them when they're making a decision. The other thing that creating this prospecting action plan does for you is it helps you create a baseline for measuring your progress or your success. And just as many of you have learned in your entrepreneurial efforts, the assumptions that you make when you start something aren't necessarily the same assumptions that bake or pay off when you're as you progress. And prospecting is the same thing. There are probably categories of business that you think are going to be prime targets for you, or that will say yes immediately and that don't. So having an action plan helps you understand where your measurement for success is in your progress, and if you should shift your emphasis and your strategy a bit to focus on other prospects. Obviously, this helps you strategically prospect, and I talked a little bit more about efficiently and effectively getting started, but it helps you have a more successful rate at a faster pace, generating more money more quickly. So one of the biggest factors with building a prospect list or understanding how to build a prospect list is, who's on the prospect list? Where do I find them? How many do I need? And I think we're going to start here with just how many, because building a large enough prospect list is a really big question. And for many, many people, this is the start of where the wheels really fall off the cart. And this can act as a real impediment towards your success. So I like to start here to provide some context on the volume of prospects. And so, if you think about today, if you are running the sales channel in your operation, if that sits with you, and you think about how many folks are actively out there in this sphere that you are calling on, or that are your current active prospects, as we go through this formula, identify if you think you've got enough in there. So in terms of building a large enough prospect list, or thinking about how large the prospect list needs to be, I like to start with the sales formula. And so that really is asking yourself. So ask yourselves as we go through this, maybe jot down a little note as you ask yourself these questions. How many sales calls do you have to make to get someone to give you an appointment, whether that's you walking in the door or whether you making a phone call? How many people do you have to try to contact to get someone to set an appointment with you? How many appointments do you have to get in order to be at a place where you can propose a solution? So, of the folks that you speak to, even if they say things like, I'm not ready and there's not time, or call me back in 6 months or whatever, those all count. Those are the number of people that you're actually talking to on appointments that you're trying to get to a juncture to propose a solution that asks them for money or an investment for your business.
Mute.
So thanks for muting whoever jumped on. And then the next piece of this equation is of those appointments that you get and you're able to propose a solution, how many times you have to propose the solution or present a solution to make a sale. And then what is your average sale amount? And what is your revenue goal? So these are common sales numbers. This certainly is not my original formula. This is just the formula around sales. And if you want to move this in any direction, you have to be able to impact one or more of these numbers. So,
hey, Eleanor, can I reinforce something? I apologize. I had to take a call, so you may have said this, but there may be people listening to this who are thinking that they can make a sale in one visit. And so this whole assumption here is that that doesn't happen, or it rarely happens. And sometimes when it does happen, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. So those are great points. Thanks, Joe. So let's go to this next slide. And let me just say this as a takeoff to Joe. It's unrealistic to think that you are going to make a sale on every presentation that you go on. And in some cases, you're going to go make a presentation and realize that there isn't a there there, or have an appointment and realize there isn't a there there. The reality is some people don't need you. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the capability. They can't generate more business. They don't have the ability to do it. Now, it's our jobs when we go to call on them to try to find that out. The second piece of this is, really understanding that you can have a phenomenal closing ratio, but you're probably not going to close every one. And the numbers I'm going to share with you on the next slide are incredibly optimistic slides, not the norm. The norm is much greater. I read an article last week that said, 400 calls to get 40 conversations, not proposals or appointments, just 400 calls to get 40 people to talk to you, to get 4 people to give you an appointment, to get 1 sale. So my ratio is better than that. And if you attend the Sales Academy, so will yours. But, the reality is you have to talk to a lot of people, and it's unrealistic to think that you're going to close every one. It's also unrealistic to bank all of your eggs in one basket. I've talked to one person. I think they're going to come through, and that's a great deal. But before we go to that juncture, let's talk about the sales formula a little bit further. So let's just make a couple of assumptions here. Let's say that we've got to make 5 calls to get 1 good appointment. That's a really good ratio. And let's say that you have a phenomenal closing rate or a proposal rate. And so for every 2 appointments that you get 1 proposal out of them. And for every proposal for every 2 proposals that you make, you get 1 sale. So that is about 50% of the time when you'd be asking somebody for money, you actually got the money. So again, these are really optimistic numbers. These are not really completely realistic numbers for a lot of folks. And let's just say that your average sale is $500 and that you've determined that you need a revenue goal of $10,000. Not a lot of money to run a business. And so if your revenue goal is $10,000 for 3 months or $10,000 for the year or $10,000 a month, whatever that is, the revenue goal is $10,000. So if we break that down and look at what it's going to take to get there, here's the math. So we've got a $10,000 sales goal, and we divide that by the average sale. So $10,000 divided by a $500 average sale is 20 sales. Okay, so to get to 20 sales, we need a certain number of proposals. And we said out of 2 proposals, we're getting 1 sale. So we actually propose a solution to 2 people and 1 of them buys. So if it takes 2 proposals to get 1 sale, and we need 20 sales, then we need 40 proposals. Now, if it takes us 2 appointments to actually get to 1 proposal, and we need 40 proposals, now we need 80 appointments, right? Because it takes us 2 appointments to get to 1 proposal, and we need 40 proposals to get to 20 sales. Okay, you guys with me? I don't know if there's a way to nod. All right. And then we determined that it takes us 5 calls to get to 1 appointment. And we need to get to the appointments, to get to the proposals, to get to the sales. So if it takes us 5 calls to get to 1 appointment and we need 80 appointments, that's 5 calls times 80 appointments. It's 400 calls. And these are good numbers. So take a minute and just think about how many prospects you need on your list that you need to start working with. In this scenario, I need to generate and start working with and make contact with 400 people. So I need to have a pretty robust list. And again, these aren't big numbers. Now, the way that you can factor and adjust this is you can increase your average sale amount, right, which takes some sales skill. You could try to increase the number of appointments that you get from your call. So you just work this set of numbers to try to increase them in some direction. But the way that you move that needle is one portion of this formula. And again, it's the sales formula. So any questions on that? Okay. Now, what's also important to think about in this prospecting scenario is most sales are made after the 5th sales call, and 8% of sellers ask 5 times. The other 92% quit. So you've taken the time to develop this prospect list and you start calling. So just because you've called on them and you haven't gotten through or you haven't managed this doesn't mean you should stop or you have to get another 400. Although you want to keep building your prospect list, the point of this is you're not going to win every time you try. And there's the dynamic of continuing to call, building and nurturing through these prospects. Some prospects, as we'll talk about in just a bit, take far longer to close than others. And so we'll talk a little bit about balancing a pipeline. So the next really big question around building this prospect list, right? So we've determined, okay, how many? Well, a lot. We need a lot. How many prospects do you need? Many prospects. And then the next question that really comes up is, where do these prospects come from? And very often, I think folks kind of feel like this, there aren't any fish here. So having a strategy around how you prospect is incredibly important, because there could be great opportunity that sits all around you, but you don't see it because you're just not in the right part of the water to fish. But understanding where to start and having a strategy around that, again, is incredibly important. I think the other thing that happens is that when there isn't a strategy, and I've said this with salespeople, I've had managed salespeople at points in my career that had very big geographies. And I've likened that to, hey, we say, hey, here you go. You've got this big sales opportunity. The world's your oyster. And it's overwhelming because there's no strategy or point and direction. And so they walk out the door and their feet are stuck in the muck of the shell because the world's their oyster, but they don't really have any direction on where to go. So you can have tons of prospects, but not know where to point and shoot, or be looking around and not seeing any. Both of those are challenges to your revenue number. So, where to start is a big question. So the first place to start, if you have an advertising model and you're looking for advertisers, the best place to start is just looking at, I shouldn't say just, because that's not the only thing. The best place to start is looking first at active advertisers. And active advertisers are better targets. Folks who are already actively engaged in marketing are more apt to listen to somebody who's selling marketing or has a solution. So start a list of everyone that you see advertising anywhere and don't prejudge them. So this is the second part where the wheels start to fall off the cart for folks, is that as they're developing a list of people to call on, they start saying, well, they're not going to do anything. And I talked to them once, and well, they were doing stuff on Facebook and they don't need business and their restaurant's busy all the time and I can never get through to him and I don't like that guy anyway. And so this list starts going on, and then people have just prejudged the crap out of it before they've even built it. So my advice to you is anybody that you see advertising anywhere should go on your list. Now, whether or not they end up as a priority is another factor. But the best path or the best approach to go is to not prejudge anybody, put them on the list. And then as you work through some of the tactics that we'll talk about in the next few slides, you can start to eliminate them or save them to call on later, or determine that they don't fit necessarily with the audience that you have, and perhaps they're not the best target to go after. So no prejudging. That's the biggest factor. No prejudging. I'll say it again, no prejudging. Okay. So the next thing that I advise is to start to create a broad prospect list. So let me go back here. I'm going to go back here for just a second. So when I say active advertisers, and I said everywhere, so anybody that you see on anything, if it's a flyer, a postcard, a piece of print material, a Facebook boosted post, a LinkedIn custom content post, the newspaper, another website, the local TV station, wherever you see them, a billboard, whatever, a bus bench, a taxi, a sign on a car. If you see them promoting themselves and advertising somewhere, put them on your list. Okay, and don't prejudge. I think I said that enough times, right? Okay, so the next thing that I advocate for is to try to really create a broad prospect list and use those resources that are available to help you identify those. And all of you participate in things that are out there. And lots of these places have pamphlets and books and online directories and who knows what else. So, chamber guides and local business directories. Competitive products often list their advertisers in business directories or other media. You can purchase data records. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Obviously, business cards that you see, any store that you walk into that's got business cards, these are leads and targets and contacts. Don't ignore those. They usually have somebody's name on them. Membership lists, all of those things. If there are specific categories of business that you like, I think with Google, you have to have a strategy. So if there are specific categories of business that you think are good fits. So for example, you can Google a tactic that we teach in prospecting or in planning to contact prospects is the same tactic that you can use in prospecting. And that is, just asking Google how to choose a carpet cleaner. And you're going to get, a number of carpet cleaners that are local that pop up in your geography, or selecting a healthcare provider, or, finding organic packaged food to go, or whatever. So you can use those to help you build a prospect list. Understanding a little bit about what you think are great targets for your audience is helpful in that. But use all of these sources that are available. You can't see, well, maybe you could see the desk behind me. Yeah, you can. If you can see the desk behind me, there are piles of, local publications and things that I've picked up that I think are great lead sources behind me. And then another stack about 4 inches high that my monitor is sitting on. So I practice what I preach as well. The next place to really build your list is around your network. And remember that your network are great prospects, and treat every contact that you come into contact with like gold. I think everyone who is an entrepreneur, certainly, or is involved in any kind of community business, or is actively just out there selling, is involved in going to community functions, just attending dinners, luncheons, whatever. And those things, you can use those 2 ways. You can use them to visit with your friends and have a couple of cocktails, or just enjoy lunch. Or you can be strategic about what you're trying to do there and really use them to try to make contacts. So I like to do a little bit of both. And I give myself a goal when I attend these things before I let myself off the hook. So for example, I will go to a networking function or a dinner or a luncheon. I try to find out who's attending in advance. If I can't find out who's on the list, I make some assumptions on who might be there, but I set a goal of how many people I want to connect with, how many business cards I want to take home, and of some folks that I think are on the primary list who I want to meet. So if I give myself a goal to meet 10 people, I meet 10 people before I let myself sit with my friends, right, to just build my prospect list. And it turns into a little game for me and makes me get it done so I can go and enjoy time with other folks. Also, in these functions, it gives you a one-on-one conversation in a non-invasive business atmosphere, and you can start to build a little bit of a relationship or some commonality. You can at least set up, hey, I think you're doing some really great things. I'd love to talk with you. Would it be okay with you if I called you on Tuesday to see if we could spend 30 minutes together? That's an acceptable line at a function. Selling them all about how fabulous your product is not. But use these things to help build that prospecting muscle. The next thing that I think is really important to think about when you are building a prospect list is, what are those businesses that are a great fit for your audience? And I don't mean an adjacency to your content. I mean your audience. So if you think about who your audience is, or who the audience persona is, and what their consumer habits are like, what things are important to them, you can start to connect that and make that resonate with advertisers when you speak with them. But it also helps you build a good prospect list and convey that better. So as an example, I just worked on a project for some folks that have a really interesting, albeit small, niche, but using the data that they had available, their Google Analytics, a follower wonks, their Facebook Insights, some other things, we were able to get some user habits and consumer habits and build a persona. So the persona, their primary user is like 25 to 44. It's predominantly male, but 25 to 44, a good audience, but tech savvy, quite interested in outdoor life, probably at an age to be married or getting married, may have small children, a healthier lifestyle. So as we built this persona, we identified, okay, so here's a guy who's interested in technology. He works hard, he plays hard. He probably drives a 4-wheel drive vehicle. He's into camping, hiking, outdoor recreation, any of those things. He probably drinks craft beer. He probably eats organic food. He's probably on a pathway to get married, so thinking about a family. And based on his interests, we know these things are important to him. So that starts to build some ideal targets on prospects of categories of business that would A, be a great fit with the audience, and B, are probably more likely to have a good ROI because they fit an interest level of the audience, but not an adjacency to the content. I hope that makes sense. If you come to Sales Academy, we're going to talk about that a bit more, and I think that'll make more sense. The next piece that I'd like to talk about in building a prospect list, so you may have all of these things and just say, still, I don't have the information that I need. I can't manage this, or there's got to be an easier way. And there are some easy ways to build prospect lists. So you can purchase business records, and I have done this quite often. And then you can also, if you have some investment, you can purchase some intelligence around them. Buying the initial business records is not necessarily that expensive. They're really not that costly, particularly if you can try to sort them down to some categories. So for example, if you said, I want to buy everybody who's in this zip code, every business that's in this zip code, that's going to be costly. But if you can say, I think that I have a really good opportunity with certain business categories. So let's just say, hypothetically, that's healthcare and education. You can purchase business records in a specific geography for those categories and drill that down. Now, business intelligence has really advanced since I started in sales, and it's actually quite fabulous now. So there are vendors today that you can buy business records from, and they come fully loaded. So they'll include business name, location, phone number. Often they'll include a contact name. They'll give you insights like business size, their annual sales volume, number of employees. They'll give you a credit rating. It's not a credit rating for you. That doesn't mean you should issue them credit. It just will tell you on a scale where they rate with where their credit stands as a business. There are a couple of vendors who will be able to provide competitive ad spend volume that starts to jack up the price a little bit on the business records. There are also vendors who can do what's called an email append, where they can append the business contact record with an email address if it's available. And my latest one that I really love is the record comes with preferred method of contact. So whether they really respond better to email, direct mail, phone, etc. So the best way to communicate with them. You can buy business records, or you can buy these records not only on the business side, but you can also buy them on the consumer side at the household level, incredibly deep. So the sources that I use for business record purchase, Info Group is probably the least expensive. They just give you the raw record. You've got to do some of the work on defining the SIC code yourself. And they assign these records by SIC code or NAICS code. If you Google SIC or NAICS code lookup, there is a government lookup for these, so you can see what business categories actually fall within codes, or you can look up certain business categories to find out what business code they fall into. It's probably the easiest way to do it. Some of the categories are a bit kludgy, so And some of the businesses that fall within the categories are crazy. So like you'll find things in a certain NAISC category that may be like automotive leasing and tractors or farm equipment will fall into the same code. So there are subset levels of those codes that you can drill down into. So Info Group offers those. Experian offers business records and consumer records. They can append a little bit more data. Like Info Group can give you everything that's on this list except for competitive ad spend volume, and I don't think they can give you preferred method of contact. Experian can give you preferred method of contact, but I'm not sure if they can give you everything else. Info Group just started a program for SMBs, so small and medium-sized businesses, called Sales Genie, which is a little bit of business leads with some support. And I think it's in the neighborhood of like $100 a month. So for me, I think that's a little bit pricey for what their target is. You can get the group, you can get the list itself. There's a company called Marketing Solutions Group that if you take the business records or you take the category records that you like, they can try to help you score better leads in the marketplace, often by putting it against your current data. So if you only have 10 active advertisers, that's probably not a great thing. If you've got a nice list of active advertisers, that might help you score them better and find lookalikes. But anyway, so regardless of how you look for it, the business data is out there. If you define some strategy that you think works for you, you can find the business record data, even if you have to buy it. I think Info Group, the base record, I want to say is under 30 cents per business record. So, a couple hundred business leads in defined categories, not too much of an investment. On the nonprofit side of the business, if you're looking for foundations and foundation contacts, I really like Inside Philanthropy. They've got a section of it that actually gives you, if it's available, you can do lookups for foundations. You can find the folks who are in charge of giving or corporate giving, or who are managing their grants, et cetera. So they're one of the best sources that I've found. Okay, that's a lot of info. Any questions on all of that? Such a quiet group. Okay. So the next piece of this puzzle is trying to prioritize who. Where can we find the leads, and then how do we prioritize who to call on, which also seems daunting many times. And so I do some things here that may be a bit much for you. So pick and choose out of this what you think works. You don't have to do everything that I'm recommending, but you may find nuggets or sorts and pieces in here that work. So I recommend categorizing the leads. You're going to end up with contacts, networks, things that you find, business directories, whatever, and you start pulling together this prospect list or this business category list. And there are going to be some things in there that just don't fit, or that you're not ready to call on, or maybe they're not a fit. But you also want to kind of know how many of these active businesses are out there. For active advertisers, categorizing them and seeing really what the categories of business are that are active. They're already spending money in the marketplace. And again, folks who are already spending money are typically easier targets to go after than folks who aren't spending money. So let me sit here for just a second on this conversation. I think every person who has managed a sales team from the beginning of time has found sellers, and I too, early in my career, have done this, who have found really nice people in businesses who've never spent a penny in advertising, but boy, they're so nice. And the hours spent in trying to cultivate people who will never spend $1 is ridiculous. Now, there's a balance in that, right? Because you want to generate new business as well. But you've got to really, there's got to be a strategy and some intelligence that you use and plan, and looking where the best targets are, and so where you can get your low-hanging fruit, where you can hit fast, and who you may have to nurture and cultivate over time. And still, that lady who's sweet as pie, who runs the antique store, that's never spent a penny ever, will probably be wonderful and refer you and may at one point give you a few ad dollars sometime in your life. And it's still an important relationship to cultivate, but not one that you should bank on or spend hours on. So trying to understand how to qualify in and qualify out and who to call on first, or with some priority is important. So I look at the business categories that are most active. I try to identify those from active advertisers in the marketplace, and also from those categories of business that are great targets to my audience. I also try to identify whether they're hot, warm, or cold. We're going to talk about that. I also try to identify if they're a large spender, a mid-sized spender, or a small spender. We're going to talk about that. And then I think a really important factor for everyone who's running a local business or who is out in the community, well, anybody who's trying to solicit or cultivate any kind of advertising, understanding whether or not the decision maker is local, whether it's a franchise group or it's an agency. And of course, anytime in any business that you can get to a local decision maker, moves them up on the list, because you can get to somebody who has the ability to say yes or no when you walk in the door. Now, it may not necessarily be incredibly easy to get to that person, right? That doesn't mean just because you have a local decision maker that it's a piece of cake in actually cultivating and making contact with the prospect, but it means you have a higher opportunity to get to the person who's going to ultimately make the decision faster. So it's an important thing. The next part of this is, understanding that you're trying to build a balanced pipeline. And I swear to you, this parlays into where we're going in prioritizing your prospects. But understanding that a pipeline is developed over about 90 days. So for wherever you are today with your revenue, it's a result of the work that you've done over the past 90 days. So whatever you did 3 months ago, having an impact on what you're achieving today, what your revenue number is today, what kind of sales you're closing today. Because you have to start this cultivation process and this contact process of making contacts. So there are habits that happen, like I really want to get to the big spenders, and so I'm going to spend a lot of time. I want to get to the hospital. I want to get to the hospital. I want the hospital, the guy who makes the decision at the hospital. This auto dealer won't talk to me. This auto dealer, this auto dealer, this auto dealer, and that's great. So you got to call on those big guys, but having some understanding around this balance is going to make a big difference. So the bigger the business, the longer period of time it will take to probably get them to close. So when you're building a pipeline and thinking about the business, that's a really important factor to take into consideration. So the bigger the spend level, the longer it will take to close. The further away from a main decision maker that you are, the longer it will take to close. The more out of season that they are from an advertising period that's hot for them, the longer it will take to close. So what do I mean by that? So if you're calling on a fireworks store at the end of July, they're probably not a hot prospect, right? So the longer they are out of their sales season, the further away they are, the further away you are from a decision maker, and the larger their budget or their spend, the longer it takes in your pipeline. So trying to get a balance of those big fish or those big spenders, those mid-sized fish and those smaller fish will help you get some wins early on, some closes fast, and build the pipeline for the larger guys. And you have to have all three to have balance in the sales cycle. So now if we take this business, I talked a little bit, I don't have to spend a lot of time here. We talked a little bit through prioritizing and building the list. If you get this category list developed, you want to know how many active advertisers or how many advertisers in total fall into this list segment. This will help you make some decisions. And again, keep in mind, I sort this with a little bit more rigor than a lot of folks. You don't have to do all of these. Pick the things that you think work well for you. I'm just sharing some options on building that list and then building a plan of attack to go after that list. So another factor, and I talked about this a bit in building a pipeline, and this really is grouping them by spending size, understanding whether or not they're big spenders, mid-level spenders, or small spenders, is key to a good prospecting strategy. So for me, this looks something like this. And again, I don't want this to, don't be fearful when you look at this, because I am a little bit more insane with how I manage my business than most people. But there are tactics that work really well. So I organize by category and by spend level. You may not necessarily do that, but I do it for a couple of reasons. So, if you don't have access to information that tells you what their competitive spend is in a marketplace, you can look at that. So if you see somebody's advertising and all you're seeing are sponsored posts and ads on Facebook, they're a mini. If you see an auto dealer who's running tons of broadcast and radio and digital in your marketplace or billboards, they're a big fish. Your hospital's a big fish. I mean, you can make some assumptions on this that make sense. Your small and medium-sized businesses sit in the middle. So if you could put a dollar factor on these, and I think this changes based on market size, I say big fish are folks who are spending more than $100,000 to $150,000 a year in advertising and marketing. Mid-sized businesses, small SMBs are between that, right? And the little guys are spending a really small amount to maybe $10,000, $5,000 a year, and depending upon your market size, this may sit somewhere in the middle. If you're in, if you're in a smaller market in New Jersey, which several of you are, you may say, okay, big spender for me is somebody who's a big spender in our marketplace is somebody who's spending $30,000, and a mid-sized spender is somebody who's spending maybe $5,000 a year, or $6,000 a year, or $10,000 a year, and a mini is somebody who's spending $1,000, right? You have to gauge that a little bit for yourself and for what you see competitors charging and where you see the marketplace. But grouping them by large, medium, and small helps give you some context of how to approach it. So in this example, let's say I've done this and then I've said, I think that the categories of business that really fit well with my topic or my audience are the home category, food, arts, and entertainment, and retail. This is what I think will work really well for my business, or the first areas that I want to chase. So then in that, I look at how many folks actually sit within that sector or within those groupings, so I can plan my strategy accordingly, and I can plan my pipeline. So in this, I really think the home category, the opportunity for me is in the big fish. They're big spenders. So I'm planning my pipeline and my prospects. I'm going to put them on the prospect list, but I know it's probably going to take me some time to cultivate them, to get them to come on board. And so that's not going to happen and make me make my revenue goal next month. I'm going to have to work them for a while. In food, arts, and entertainment, it feels like I've got a whole bunch of little guys. So if I put together a good strategy for them, I can probably close them or get business out of them quickly. And in the mid-sized group as well. And then for small retailers, I think we've got some solutions that can work. And so I've got some balance there and what I can see I'm working on. Now, if you want to apply this approach as well, or if you just want to use this approach, this can work from a prospecting strategy and help you just give a quick, fast, and easy checklist. And this is just trying to determine whether or not they're hot, warm, or cold. So a hot prospect obviously has high revenue potential. They have high long-term opportunity, but they're hot because they'll close in 30 days. Your car dealer is probably not going to give you your first contact with the local car dealer is not going to close in 30 days. You're probably going to have to cultivate that a bit. So your warm contacts then fall into something that might close within 60 to 90 days, and cold are going to be more than 90 days, or they're a low long-term opportunity, or they're a low revenue potential. So you can have somebody who's somewhat of a cold prospect who has high revenue potential, but is going to be more than 90 days to close. I hope that makes sense. So let's look at really what the indicators are of hot prospects. So hot prospects are prospects who are entering or nearing a peak season. Remember, they plan in advance a bit. So you want to get them as they're in the planning stage. Hot prospects are in highly competitive industries. And you can see what those are just based on your marketplace and who you see. This is why it's so important to really have a good lens on who's actively promoting their business in your market. Because if they're active and you see lots of people in the same category, you don't need any research to tell you that's a competitive industry. And in any competitive industry, there is money to be spent, and you could be a solution. The prospect's already actively advertising. I've beat that with a stick through this. You have a prospect that's entering, that's in the market, and there's a new competitor entering the market. This is also a great opportunity, a hot prospect. So this may be the antique store has never advertised, and you have a lovely relationship with the nice lady who runs it, but there are 2 other antique stores that are opening on the same road. Okay. That could be an opportunity, time to talk with her. That could take her from a very cold prospect to a good prospect. Also, if a business is under new leadership, ownership, or management, they've got something that they want to communicate. So any lens on that, press releases that come in of folks who want to promote that they're a new business, or they're a new manager, or they're under new ownership, all of those things are great. And then, of course, anybody who's going out of business, they may have never advertised in their lives, but they're going out of business and they'll promote the hell out of that. So those create hot prospects. The super, super hot prospects are obviously the ones who call you. So I just want to hit this for just a minute. If somebody calls you and inquires about business with you, for heaven's sakes, call them back at lightning speed. At lightning speed, get back to them because they're a hot, hot, hot prospect. All right. So having this prospect attack list helps you really establish this effective and balanced sales pipeline, and helps you develop that winning strategy. It also helps you structure your sales game, your materials, your presentations. It helps you have your roadmap for what you're going, and it helps you measure and monitor your success. And again, targeting both large and small prospects builds balance in the pipeline, and that in turn helps you generate more revenue quickly. Now, again, I'm a bit intense, and so I track my progress. And I would advise, if you're going to go to some of this extent, that you're tracking your progress too. You may look at this by saying, I thought that there was an incredible amount of opportunity for me in the healthcare business, but we've called on 25 prospects and we've not been able to get through to anybody. So maybe this isn't a great target category, but we're having really good luck with service providers. And so, who knew? 8 guys selling HVAC and window replacements are really anxious to advertise. So adjust your effort where the money is. So paying attention to where it's coming from, the categories it's coming from, helps you prioritize. I also look at market spend and the penetration. So of the folks I put on my prospect list, how many of them do I have actually currently active with me? And what is that in terms of the percentage? So just another lens to look at. Okay. So in prospecting summary here, I'll go back and review the path that we covered. Determine your sales formula. This is going to help you understand or really get a good lens on how many prospects you need to put into your list, and then define those targets. Identify those best opportunity prospects. And again, take a little time, like if you can set, and I know everyone is busy, but if you can just set a little time aside to work through some analysis around building this prospect list, I promise you it will pay off tenfold. The time that you put into it, if it's a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday evening, or whether you're getting your kids to help you do research and compile these into a spreadsheet, I promise you it will help you get success faster because you've got a strategy and a plan, and you really understand where you're pointing and shooting. Then it will help you identify the best opportunity prospects. Also in this identifying the best opportunity prospects, get your friends and family involved. It's great when they call you and go, hey, I just drove by this business and I saw a sign. Did you see this sign? I had a friend who was in recruitment, who was selling recruitment advertising at a recruitment job site, and I was on the turnpike, and on the turnpike there was a sign that the company that ran those booths that hired those employees was hiring. There was a sign that said, hey, we're hiring. So I took a picture of it and shot a picture to her and said, hey, do you know these folks are hiring? And so, get other people involved in your prospecting strategy, because you can't be all things everywhere. You don't know every business that's opening. You don't know every sign that goes up. You don't know every business that's closing. You don't know these things. So solicit some help from the people that love you and want you to have success. Reach for the low-hanging fruit first. Again, going after folks who are currently spending money is a far easier prospect. Build some balance in the pipeline, and always consider that consumer buying season, understanding that you have to work in advance, and that your pipeline and sales, you have the consumer buying season and then the pipeline that you're building, and really think about that. The work that you do today is going to be the revenue that you earn 90 days from today. So being strategic about your prospecting is really important. Build the list and then just start making calls, and don't be frustrated if you don't find that you're not having success in the first 30 days. It really is a campaign on yourself. It's not just a decision on getting that business to generate from that prospect list. Okay, any questions on this? I'm circling the airport. I've talked a lot. Is anybody still with me? I see Joe's hand. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that you all are awake and that this was so compelling you're just taking lots of notes and very excited about building your prospect list. For those folks, where's my arrow? Sorry. Okay, there we go. For those folks who haven't signed up yet for the Sales Academy, I really encourage you to do that. I don't think you'll regret it. I think that you will really be excited about what comes out of it. We'll share certainly some proven sales strategies that work, but this is not just sales training where it's overview. This really is tactical work. And the idea here is to tactically enable you to work on prospects that are in your geography, and build a plan to go out and call on them. And then through the 6 weeks that we follow up on this, that you have support, get some feedback and coaching to help you build some really good momentum in your target areas. So you will learn a strategic and intentional sales process. We'll role play through that. We'll have fun together. We'll really learn through the process together. But this process will help you take the guesswork out of and the rejection out of the sales equation. And so some of those things where I called on him and he said no, or I couldn't get through, or some of those challenges that just happen in sales, this process will help you eliminate those. We'll also, as I said, work with real prospects in your town, in your region, in your category, so that you can develop word tracks or opening lines to help you get in the door, and help you make progress faster. And then we'll work through the sales process as we're coaching. We'll also talk about just working on emails, how to send emails that actually get some response, and how to craft those in the right way, and then understanding how to qualify prospects so you're not wasting time in theirs. And ultimately, this is all designed to just help you succeed in the real world out there on the street. I have a sales mentor who coined this real world approach, but it's absolutely true. You can have great academic experience and great academic knowledge about how to do sales, but getting practical experience, role playing, working through these components makes the difference. And you'll leave with a revenue plan, and I think more confidence than you had coming in. You'll get ongoing support and coaching for 6 weeks, and you should have some momentum at the end of this. So help us, God. There will be some momentum. So if you haven't signed up already, do it fast. Joe shared a link. There's limited space, and I think we're pretty close to full. So
yeah, I think we have about 4 spots left. So make sure you get those in while you can.
Yep, absolutely. And then lastly, for the folks who are on the line that have already signed up to Sales Academy, and the folks who are on the line who are going to sign up to Sales Academy, because what an incredible thing that Montclair State and the center is bringing an offering for you. It's a phenomenal, wonderful thing that they're trying to deliver for the folks who are there in New Jersey. But for the folks who are on the phone who are attending, and the folks who are on the phone who are going to attend now because you're excited, I need you to bring 30 prospects with you to Sales Academy. Bless you, Joe.
Sorry, forgot to mute.
So bring a prospect list of 30 people that you can call on, big, small, in between, it doesn't matter. I think a key factor is we'd like to make them be local decision makers. Bring those to the Sales Academy, and we're going to work on those so that when you leave Sales Academy, you've got a real good plan of action on how to get in on those prospect lists and those targets. So all the work and the practices that we do within Sales Academy will be on that list. Joe, anything else you guys want to add?
No, just looking at the date, we have it as the 17th and the 18th, correct?
Did I put that in here incorrectly?
I just want to make sure. I thought I saw 16, 17. I'm not sure.
You did. That was me.
All right. I just had to run a double check my numbers. I just
Yep, 17, 18.
Okay. Ooh, scared myself there.
So, Joe, check your form because I think it says 16, 17 on the form.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I just saw that. So that's my bad too. Whoops. Okay, folks.
So that's where I stole it from. Okay, so Sales Academy is the 17th and the 18th. It's Wednesday and Thursday, right? The third week of July.
Right.
August. Third
Thanks,
week of August. Oh, my goodness. Okay. So sign up for Sales Academy. Just a few slots left. Start building your prospect list. And listen, if you have a seller, send that seller, attend the Sales Academy with them. If you don't have a seller, then get your butt in the seats.
All right.
All right. Okay. And Joe will have this. If you have any questions or you want to reach me to talk about Sales Academy or any of those things, feel free to reach out. I'll share a little bit more detail with you if you need it.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We're going to be posting this online for those of you who weren't able to stay tuned the entire time. And if you can always check back at njnewscommons.org for the full listing and more information about all the programs and facilities discussed during this session. So thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.